Mountaineer Nation, let's ride.
But Don Nealon's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels fear to tread. As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of Golden Blue football. Here is Harrison trouble, stiff arms, the would-be tackler, comes down over the 25 to 20, goes around about it to 15 to 10 to 5, a touchdown West Virginia, he did it!
Takes the Slater one-on-one with the defender, look at that one!
West Virginia football, you know what that's about, they don't know what it's about, West Virginia football, put all our tape on.
Let them know. Leave no doubt tonight. Leave no doubt tonight. No doubt. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into a live stream here on the Country Roads webcast channel. This isn't our traditional Q&A live stream. You might have noticed last week I've started to do a second one here where I update the snap counts and provide injury updates as well. And I'm going to try and do these as much as I possibly can weekly throughout the season. We'll see how it works out moving forward, but hopefully it will work out to where I can do it pretty consistently throughout the season. The snap count series on its own didn't perform well, but folding it into a live stream version has seemed to work better. So going to try and continue to do it that way. So hopefully you got a chance to check out our Duquesne review podcast that released today, as well as our player grades video. Hopefully you got a chance to check both those out. Then over the next couple of days, we'll be releasing the Pitt preview podcast episode. And then coming up, looking like Wednesday night will be our Q&A stream where we get your all's predictions for the game against Pittsburgh. Really excited, backyard brawl week. So I think I might have said Penn State preview again. Obviously meant Pittsburgh, but 2023 Backyard Brawl, 106th edition of the Backyard Brawl. Exciting time to be a Mountaineer fan this week, as this might be the last time we get to see this game for a while, but we're getting to play it in Morgantown in front of a night game capacity crowd. You know, it's going to be loud in there. It's going to be an awesome atmosphere. Neil Brown mentioned in his press conference today, it's going to be the first post 7:30 kick West Virginia's had on a Saturday night game in the Neil Brown era. So that's awesome to hear. You know, you've had some Thursday night games. You've had some games that kicked, 6:30, but this is the first, I guess you could say, true night game of the Neil Brown era. And what about, couldn't pick a better one. It's Pitt, and we're ready to hopefully come out there victorious. But before we get there, I want to update the injuries and, like I said, talk about the snap counts. And then I want to do my little depth chart projection like I did in this live stream last week, where, kind of take in those injury updates and those snap count updates as well, and try and formulate my own depth chart. Also have the West Virginia official depth chart to go off of now as well. Since they finally released one this week. I know it took forever, it seems like, for them to finally choose to do so, and was glad to finally see them release one this week, although I think there were some discrepancies in it with what we saw both against Penn State and then what we saw, of course, against Duquesne, as some players were out and stuff. But speaking of players being out, I'm going to get into the injury updates first, and then I'll discuss the snap counts a little bit. So Injury updates wise, Neil Brown kind of revealed most of these today. Of course, you saw who was out for the game against Duquesne, Justin Johnson, Devin Carter, Traylon Ray being the main ones of note besides Montre Miller and Marcus Floyd on defense that we kind of knew about. But as far as updates, as far as injuries are concerned, EJ Horton expected to be back for this game against Pittsburgh coming up this week. That's going to be big at the wide receiver position, I think. And then Asani Redwood, who's a guy that a lot of people have been excited about seeing him along that defensive line. He had a ton of sacks in high school, had that long-term injury, didn't get to play last season. Seems like he's finally ready to go and might be on the field this weekend for the game against Pitt, and that would be an awesome time to get him back as well. Maybe get a little bit of an addition to your pass rush from Redwood there. Justin Johnson, Devin Carter, both will be back. Traylon Ray, Neil Brown sounded a little bit questionable on that one, but hopeful that Traylon Ray will be able to return at the wide receiver position. Marcus Floyd, also still questionable, but could return, and that would be big there. A lot of talked about West Virginia needing a fourth safety there because they're only playing 3 across the 2 positions, and that's tough, save for this previous game where you got Avery Wilcox and Aiden Tagaloa Nelson in. Talk more about that in the snap count coming up. But then Montre Miller, of course, the status remains a mystery and even a little bit more mysterious after Neil Brown's comments in the press conference today saying that the ball was in Montre Miller's court. I don't know exactly what that means, but it sounds like it could be a long-term injury, and maybe he's hinting at the ball being in his court as to if he wants to try and rehab and come back at some point this season, or if he wants to shut it down and kind of end this season for him. That's the only way that I could think of it, and that's the way that I took it personally with what we've heard about the Montre Miller injury, and that's sad to hear. I hope that he gets a chance to come back. I was excited to see what he could bring to the cornerback position. Coming over from Kent State, and we haven't really had a chance to do so. Only got, I think, 12 snaps against Penn State and been on the shelf ever since. So West Virginia needs some help at the cornerback position, as we know. Montre Miller's, kind of a veteran in college football that I thought could have helped them there, but who knows what we'll see with him moving forward. But that's kind of what I've got as far as injury updates that Neil Brown provided today. I don't think I left any of those out. Hopefully not. But having said that, as you see it scrolling across the bottom there, be sure to drop your questions, comments, concerns in the chat there. We'll touch on those throughout, as I'm about to now, before I switch gears and cover those snap counts, as I stated I was going to earlier. Silas, what's going on, man? Good to see you in here. As always, brother, appreciate you tuning in and chiming in. BB says, howdy, y'all. How's it going, BB? Appreciate you tuning in and chiming in. Also, he says he'd love to know what happened in the locker room during the rain delay. A different team came out than went in. Absolutely. I definitely made a point to put that into my analysis today when I was recording the Duquesne Review and Reaction podcast, which, like I said, check that out if you guys haven't already. Just dropped that today here on YouTube. And, of course, the audio version's out on all podcast platforms as well. But certainly was 2 separate teams, pre-weather delay and post-weather delay. And post-weather delay was awesome. 28 points there in the second quarter, that explosion. Neil Brown's highest scoring quarter since he's been at West Virginia. So I thought we saw some good things from the offense there after that delay, as much as they were kind of sleep at the wheel, I guess you could say, coming out early. And, I mentioned in that same podcast that I think there was a little bit of look ahead going on. We knew who we had coming up this week. I mean, we know how big this game is. So, the players and coaches know that as well in the back of their minds, even though they would probably never admit that. That's what I think led to the slow start a little bit, or at least that's what I'm hoping, because we can't afford to have slow starts like that moving forward as we get into the heart of this schedule now. He says pre-rain delay, Duquesne was giving us fits, especially on the secondary after the rain locked them down. Yes, additionally, I'm going to cover this a little bit more in snap counts. I thought after the first Duquesne series, which I guess it's technically their second drive. I'm calling it their first drive because it was just kind of a resumed drive to me after the punt was muffed by us and they got to continue that drive. But after that drive, and they scored to go up 7-0, West Virginia made a change at the cornerback position, which you'll see reflected in the snap counts. But after that, I thought the secondary played better. And then, like you said, after the rain delay, a ton better for the most part. That's when you got the other interception from Avery Wilcox. You had a pass breakup from Malachi Ruffin, and I thought they played the deep ball and played things better overall after that weather delay. Agree with you there. Hopefully we see that same team that came out post weather delay against Pitt, but they certainly should be hungry and ready in this one. Appreciate you guys there tuning in and chiming in that have done so thus far. If you're in here, I encourage you to do so, and I'll touch on your comments as we continue throughout the stream. Try and not keep these, or try and not make these too long, I guess I should say, as not as long as our usual Q&A stream, which will come later this week. But as long as we need to be here to keep up with your all's comments and cover the things we need to, that's fine with me. Having said that, if you are in here live, or even if you're watching this after the fact on a playback, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up button, give us a like on the video. It really helps its performance and future videos performances here on the channel as well. And if you're a WVU fan, Big 12 fan, college football fan, be sure hit that subscribe button. Helps us, helps you, helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. Having said that, let's get ready. I can encourage you continue to drop your comments there in the chat. I'll catch on those momentarily, but let's get into the snap counts. Snap counts from the game against Duquesne. Certainly got more players that got into the game, so this list will be a little bit longer than it was when we went over it against Penn State, but running it down, we'll go over the offense first, and then I'll come back, catch up in the chat if there's any comments, and then we'll hit the defense before we get into depth chart. And then, like I said, won't keep this stream too long. Try and keep it as brief as possible. Starting off at quarterback here on the snap counts, nearly dead even, 43 for Garrett Green, 42 for Nico Marchiol. Moving into the backfield, 33 snaps for CJ Donaldson, 24 for Jaheim White. And how about Jaheim White really standing out? I think he's going to be super special, man. I just love that guy to death. Leads the Mountaineers in rushing in his debut, going over 100 yards and scoring a touchdown. And I think, the combination of him and C.J. Donaldson, that speed of White and the power of Donaldson together can be a lethal duo moving forward. Jalen Anderson, 18 carries. Don't sleep on him, obviously. And then we got to look at the other true freshman, who I think is probably heading for a red shirt with how many weapons West Virginia has in the backfield. But you saw his potential as well. 5'11", 240 pounds, just a monster out there, but very quick for his size. He got 15 snaps and got into the end zone as well. And as you see, Justin Johnson was out for that game. Fullback, both these guys preferred walk-ons. Luke Hamilton, we've talked about a lot, wearing number 35 out there, got in for 3 snaps. One of them very great, where he led blocked for C.J. Donaldson on a 4th and 2, and C.J. was able to pick up the first down. And then Colin McBee got 2 snaps himself. Hold on momentarily while I take a swig of my coffee. Throat's getting a little dry here. Apologies there, but moving right along with the offensive snap counts here. Hudson Clement, we know about his standout performance, 5 catches, 177 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Got 50 snaps to lead all receivers in the game, actually, as he filled in as the starter at the Z wide receiver position with Devin Carter and Traylon Ray, both out, and the West Virginia Mountaineers have certainly found a receiver that they can factor into the rotation moving forward after that standout performance. Jeremiah Aaron got 41. Rodney Gallagher got 33, and we saw him get his first couple touches as a Mountaineer, and I thought he looked impressive in those touches, despite the fact that one of them led to a turnover when he was diving for the end zone, trying to stretch out to the pylon, and lost the ball out of bounds, but great effort, and I thought really impressed on that first carry on that reverse with that awesome juke, broke a guy's ankles, made him fall to the ground. So you see the potential and why Rodney Gallagher is one of the highest rated West Virginia football commits in the history of the program. Jashawn Polk, 29 snaps at the wide receiver position. Cortez Braham got 25. Preston Fox got 23, got into the end zone there. Love to see that. Then you got the walk-on CJ Cole getting 16 snaps. Noah Massey, that's a guy I've been wondering where he's at. They talked about his big frame at the slot position coming up from the Division II level. Seems like he might be behind some other guys right now, but 6'5", 240 pounds. Hopefully he finds a way to get on the field and make a difference in some way. Maybe they're saving him a little bit as a secret weapon to break out, give him a few reps against Pitt. We'll see. If so, he got 9 snaps to try and get into the mold of playing time ready, for that big matchup against Pitt this week. And then Jarrell Williams at the slot wide receiver position got 8 snaps, and then another walk-on, Tyler Evans, 7 snaps late in this game. Tight ends, of course, Cole Taylor dominating the snap count there with 41. He's just going to be an absolute weapon for the Mountaineers in the passing game this season. I think one of the better receiving tight ends West Virginia's had in recent seasons. Traylon Davis, 26 snaps, looked good again. Victor Wickstrom got 13 snaps, one of the international players for the Mountaineers. I'm loving to see him develop. He's put on a lot of weight. When I saw him out there, I almost didn't recognize him, but looked good on his minimal action, as did Will Dixon, who got in on six snaps, late in the game, the redshirt freshman. Offensive line, as you see, a ton of guys getting in on the action here. We'll run through these as quickly as possible. Thomas Remick, 61 snaps to lead all offensive linemen. Brandon Yates got 56 snaps, that being the starter at right guard position. Then when the second teamers came in, he shifted over and was the second team center for the Mountaineers before Landon Livingston came in there and took over and snapped the rest of the game. Nick Malone, 46 snaps, playing the tackle position for the Mountaineers. Sully Weedman, 43, getting some reserve snaps at the guard position. Doug Nestor, 42, and Wyatt Milam, 42, as your starting tackles there. Of course, the great Zach Frazier, best center in the country, in my opinion, 35 snaps. Jaquay Hubbard, 31 snaps, spelling Brandon Yates at the guard position. Johnny Williams, the true freshman tackle, getting in on the action, and he looked good when he got in there. 24 snaps for him, 24 snaps for preferred walk-on Bryce Biggs, and 24 snaps for the aforementioned Landon Livingston at the center position. So that's who played for West Virginia snap count-wise on the offensive side. Let me catch up in the comments here really quickly with you guys, and then we'll switch over to talk about the snap counts on the defensive side. He says, thoughts on Brown saying Garrett Green throws the ball with too high of RPMs in the first quarter, making it hard to catch. Never heard that one before. I've noticed, that you've seen players have that issue before, sometimes just throwing a fastball. We need to put a little bit more touch on it. And I think that's why maybe Green's missing some of his quote unquote layups, as Neil Brown talked about in the post-game press conference. I believe that was after Penn State, and he's kind of continued to reference that. He hit more in this game, but, maybe that's why he's not putting as much touch on the ball, as leading to misses there. But I think in regards to what Neil Brown's saying, you can definitely tell Garrett Green, he's amped up when the game starts. He's, really excited. He's a player that plays with high energy. And when you're playing with that high energy, especially starting out, it can lead to some, errant throws, not necessarily because of nerves, just because you're so amped up. I was that type of player that was emotional when I played. I was a basketball player, but there would be games where, my first 3 or 4 shots, they would look terrible. And I'm like, what's going on? But it would take me, a couple possessions to settle into the game, just because I was so amped up, excited, adrenaline running for the game. And so I think that's a little bit about what Neil's talking about with Garrett. Now, how I would alleviate that is something that Dana Holgerson talked about doing back in 2016 with Skylar Howard, who I think is probably the most comparable recent quarterback to Garrett Green. And I think Skylar was that way a lot, played with a lot of emotion. And Dana would always talk about, the way that he loved to start games in that era. And you can go back and watch. If you go back and watch games from 2016, he would, once he figured this out, he would start the game with a called run for Skylar Howard, so Skylar Howard could get hit. Because he said once Skylar Howard got hit, it kind of woke him up, and then boom, he was settled in, ready to go. So maybe Neil Brown should do that for Garrett Green, a little quarterback counter, quarterback power, or something to start the game, get Garrett Green into it, get those emotions settled, and maybe we won't see some of those errant throws on those short to intermediate passes that we've seen throughout these first couple of games, because I think he's throwing the deep ball well overall. But that's what I think there, Silas. Dylan Lester, appreciate you tuning in and chiming in. How many rushing yards do you project for this game versus Pitt? I'm traveling up from Dallas with my dad and brother and hoping to see us throttle them. Go Ears. Love the channel. Hey, Dylan, really appreciate that. That means a lot, man. I'm heading up myself to making the trek from down in Mercer County up there. And might be the only game I get to go to this year, but could not miss seeing the Backyard Brawl in person in Morgantown. Never got a chance to see that particular game there. Got to see it last year at Pitt, but I wanted to see it in Morgantown. So I'm just excited to go up to Dylan for sure. As far as rushing yards versus Pitt, I honestly think West Virginia should be able to get over 200 yards rushing against this Pitt team. Last year, West Virginia got close to that, and I think Pitt's defensive line was better. Not to say that this year's defensive line is bad for Pitt, but last year, Pitt led the nation in sacks. And this season, they've shown some deficiencies in that aspect when you look at what Cincinnati did to them last week. And, Pitt's offensive strength supposed to be the run game, and their offensive line struggled a little bit in that game. So I'm hoping to see us throttle them too. And I certainly think we match up better with them than we did last season. And of course, you can make the argument that we could have, would have, should have won that game already. But I certainly think that West Virginia looks to be better than they were last season. And I don't think Pitt is as good as they were last season. But as far as rushing yards as a team, I think we'll cross 200. And if it's as bad of a matchup as I think it could be, we might cross 300. But also, you got to take into account Pitt's game plan is probably going to be similar to what ours was against Penn State, kind of sell out to stop the run and dare the quarterback to beat us, which Drew Aller did. And if Pitt does that to us, we have to hope Garrett Green's able to come through and do the same thing. But barring Pitt, absolutely, bringing 6, 7 guys every play and just manning up on the outside with 4 or 5 guys, I think that West Virginia should rush for over 200 yards, Dylan. Timothy, what's going on, man? Let's go Mountaineers indeed, as always, as always. Luke, appreciate you tuning in and chiming in as well. He says, from what I saw, Pitt quarterback rolling left is his weakness. Let's get in the backfield. Yeah, he's a guy that can, when the play breaks down, extend it and make some things happen with his legs. But I also saw, I watched they had the condensed game here on YouTube of Pitt and Cincinnati. I think it's like 20 or 25 minutes long. I watched that night before last night, actually. Excuse me. But I agree. I think the Pitt quarterback struggled a little bit in that game, and hopefully West Virginia is able to get some pressure on him and make him continue to struggle. I think Durajai's shown some great pass rushing capabilities. He's got 2.5 sacks through these first 2 games, and he's only played 25 snaps. And then I mentioned earlier, Sonny Redwood's coming back from injury. That's a guy that no one has film on yet that was a pass rushing specialist in high school. So hopefully West Virginia can put both those guys on the edges and make some noise against Pitt, get after that quarterback a little bit. So we'll see what happens there. Appreciate you guys tuning in there and chiming in, and continue if you're in here live. Drop your comments there in the chat. And like I said, if you're in here live or watching on playback, hit the like button, give us a thumbs up. That helps. And if you're not in here live, but you want to drop a comment, do so. I'll try and respond to you in text form. But having said that, encourage you guys in the chat, continue to drop your thoughts. Let's get to the snap counts on the defensive side here. Like I said, don't want to keep you guys too late. I know a lot of people probably got to work in the morning, myself included in that, actually. But having said that, defensive line, excuse me there, 34 snaps for Eddie V to lead the defensive lineman, starting defensive tackle. Mike Lockhart, the starting nose tackle, with 28 snaps, and your starting defensive end, Sean Martin, with 24 snaps. So your starters leading the snap count, actually, despite, some other guys getting in the action in West Virginia playing a lot of defensive linemen. 19 snaps for Day Hawkins, 17 for Tomiwa Durajay, who I just mentioned, doing a great job rushing the passer so far for West Virginia this season. Jalen Thornton, the legacy player, with 16 snaps. And then another legacy player getting in on the action in this one, Corey McIntyre Jr. Of course, his father, the great fullback, played in the NFL for a long time with the Bengals, if I'm not mistaken. 13 snaps for him, 10 for Torma Mulbo, and 10 for Hammond Russell, as they both spelled Mike Lockhart at that nose tackle spot. Zakai Lawton, finally getting to see him get in on the action for the Mountaineers. The in-state native, transferred over from Cincinnati, got 4 snaps in this game, actually graded out highly. I believe he was the 6th highest graded player. He just missed the cut of making player grades videos that I do there, according to PFF. Orion Fisher, the true freshman, got in on 3 snaps, and I believe he had a tackle for loss, if I'm not mistaken, or half a tackle for a loss at least. And then you get 3 walk-ons that got in on the action on the defensive line. 2 snaps for DJ Cotton and Harry Hilbert, and 1 snap for Derek Burlitz. The Bandits, you got 28 snaps for Jared Bartlett, 18 for Tyron Bradley. And Torres Simmons, when he came back, he's a guy that entered the portal this offseason but changed his mind, decided to return to West Virginia because he had been listed as a Bandit before, but when he came back, they had him listed as a defensive end. So seemed like he was going to play there this season. Believe that's still where he's listed on the roster, if I'm not mistaken. But when you look at his snap counts on PFF and the position they have him listed at, it's the ROLB, which is what they list West Virginia's Bandits at on PFF, the right outside linebacker. And so have to group him in with the Bandits here with his 13 snaps. And then James Hurd, the freshman, got a lot of praise through the spring. That's cooled down since Tyron Bradley got here and kind of jumped over him a little bit, but the freshman did get in on a couple snaps in this one. And then linebackers, Trey Lathan leads the way with 38 snaps. Thought he looked really good again. Ben Cutter, the true freshman, get to see him get on the action. 28 snaps, and he looked good when he got in there. He actually provided the pressure on the quarterback that led to the Avery Wilcox interception after the weather delay that he returned 34 yards on a nice interception return that I believe led to another score for the Mountaineers. If I'm not mistaken, they turned both their interceptions in this game into points. Lee Koba, of course, we know what we have with him. Didn't need to see him get a ton of snaps in this game, but looked good in his 26. Joff Rivera with 23 snaps. Believe he had a TFL he got in on, or may have even been on a half a sack. Caden Beiser just recently got a scholarship. Him and Hudson Clement, the final two additions to the scholarship roster for West Virginia, as they had those two scholarships remaining. They've handed them out in each of the first two games. One to Caden Beiser before the first game, and then one, of course, to Hudson Clement after his great performance in the locker room after this game against Duquesne, but Beiser got in on 3 snaps there at the Mike linebacker position. Then your Spears, Hershey McLaurin gets 25 snaps, Lance Dixon gets 24, so almost dead even there as those guys continue to split time. And then the youngster Raleigh Collins got in on 3 snaps. Cornerback position. Now, this is what I was going to talk about when I talked about West Virginia making some changes after that first drive in which they fell behind 7-0. And that is because Andrew Wilson Lamp actually was the starter at cornerback for West Virginia with Beanie Bishop on the opposite side. And in the first game against Penn State, those were the two that got the most snaps, if I'm not mistaken, as well. And so it looked like they were going to be your starters throughout, moving forward. But after that first drive, West Virginia fell behind 7-0. A third down before the punt that, of course, then would lead to Duquesne continuing the drive. The receiver was open. It was soft coverage. The quarterback just missed him. Then later on that same drive, once it was resumed, same out route, third down, same coverage, hit him that time. And then you get the long touchdown pass, 38-yarder, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, something like that, 32-yarder maybe, to DJ Powell from Parantes. And on, I believe, all 3 of those plays, or at least 2 out of the 3, it was Andrew Wilson Lamp on the coverage of DJ Powell. So West Virginia made a change following that. Andrew Wilson Lamp didn't see too many snaps. You see him down on the snap count despite being the starter. So hate to see it for a guy like Wilson Lamp, who we thought was finally going to come into his own this season. And maybe he still will. Maybe this will be a wake-up call for him, and I would love to see him bounce back against Pitt. But Malachi Ruffin replaced him, and I thought the defense got a lot better, and Malachi Ruffin continues his development from walk-on to becoming an impactful player. And I would not be surprised at all to see our 2 starting corners be Malachi Ruffin and Beanie Bishop coming out against Pittsburgh, because West Virginia did say that they were going to change some things. There were going to be some guys seeing less playing time. I think that that's reflected with the changes they made during this game, but they also stated that there are some things they've changed coverage-wise. They just didn't want to break those out against Duquesne and give Pitt film on those. So there are some things they've adjusted post-Penn State that we haven't seen yet that allegedly we're going to see against Pitt. So for all the struggles in the secondary, I wanted to mention those things. But having said that, Malachi Ruffin, the corner that replaced Wilson Lamp, ends up with 47 snaps to lead the cornerbacks. Beanie Bishop, 44 snaps. He's been the most consistent of the corners, albeit he's given up some plays at times himself. But in this game, he made plays, including a very impressive over-the-shoulder interception in which he went up and got the ball, kind of high-pointed it with the receiver and took it from him. 16 snaps for Jacoby Spells, who I think is really going to need to come on now with the combination of Wilson Lamp's struggles and the injury to Montre Miller that, seems like it's going to be semi-long-term at least. So hopefully his snap count continues to increase and he continues to evolve in his maturity. I think that that's really what we're waiting on with him, because I think the talent certainly isn't the issue. We know how highly regarded he was. I was surprised that he was behind the corners that he was behind. I think as he continues to develop, he may move closer and closer to challenging Malachi Ruffin for that other spot opposite Beanie Bishop. But 16 snaps in this one, like I said, Wilson Lamp with 12. And then you get both the Jacksons, Josiah and Jackson and Jordan Jackson, the true freshman twin brothers. 6 snaps for Josiah, 3 for Jordan. And then safeties for West Virginia to round out our snap counts here. 38 for Aubrey Burks, 37 for Anthony Wilson, 36 for Keyshawn Cobb, there's your three guys that are pretty much playing for West Virginia across those two safety positions right now. And then, of course, you get 13 from Avery Wilcox, made the most of those with the interception, 3 for Christian Stokes, and then 2 for the true freshman Aiden Tagaloa Nelson. So that's what you got snap counts wise versus Duquesne. Went over injury reports, went over snap counts. I'm going to give my projected depth chart, in which I used, of course, both the injury reports and those snap counts, and West Virginia's official one to kind of come up with my own projected depth chart post Duquesne, of course. But let me see if we got any comments in here in the meantime. Timothy Green says, I love this channel. It's where you can get all of your Mountaineer content. Jordan does a great job. I appreciate that, Timothy. Love the shout out there. Means a lot. Definitely going to have plenty of content moving forward. Like I said, if you just kind of want a glimpse at what game week is like, you can kind of look to how things went today. Release the player grades video. Release the Duquesne game review podcast. Now you got the snap counts live stream. In the next couple of days, you'll have the Backyard Brawl preview podcast. And then, of course, we'll have the Q&A stream where we try and get your all's prediction for the game. So plenty of content. And then any news that comes in between, we'll put videos out on the YouTube channel there as well. So definitely, subscribe here if you're a West Virginia fan. Appreciate the shout out there, Timothy. Having said that, with no further ado, let me get into my projected depth chart. And like I said, I'll try and keep this as brief as possible, so won't be with you guys too much longer. But as it says there on the bottom of the screen, drop your comments, questions, concerns in the chat. Touch on them one more time after I finish scrolling through this depth chart before we get out of here on this CRW Snap Counts live stream post Duquesne pre-Backyard Brawl, as we're in Pitt hate week here. Of course, eat shit Pitt, right? Quarterbacks, Garrett Green, Nico Marchiol, obviously the pecking order there. Running backs, I'm still going CJ Donaldson, Jalen Anderson. Thought about putting some oars in there, but I think you'll certainly see Jaheim White get his carries after he showed that he can do it at this level, despite being a true freshman. And he really just brings a different dynamic than any of the other running backs with his home run hitting ability. So I think you'll see Jaheim White and Justin Johnson get involved there. I think on the official depth chart, they actually have Justin Johnson as the second running back. But from what I've seen, Jalen Anderson's getting the second most carries and on the field the second most. So that's why I've got him here on mine. The X wide receiver position, this is where I flipped Hudson Clement over to this side. At the game against Duquesne, he got the start at the Z because both Devin Carter and Traylon Ray were out of the game. And I think with his performance, prior to this, if you go back and look at the depth chart post Penn State or the depth chart West Virginia released before the Duquesne game, Hudson Clement wasn't even on there. So that shows how out of nowhere that he came as a preferred walk-on, now turned into a scholarship player, and also I think turning into a contributor. I've got him first team at the X spot. I think he's going to, if he doesn't start there, I'd honestly kind of be surprised after how much he's outperformed Cortez Braham, who has been the starter there, and Jeremiah Aaron, the other guy that's been repping there. I think both those guys have one catch on the season, if I'm not mistaken, and both have at least one drop. But then also, that's why I threw those guys in at the second team, and I threw oars in between their names, and I also tossed out E.J. Horton there because we've heard, throughout fall camp, there was rave reviews about his speed. You even heard Chad Scott in the press conferences today talking about him having scary speed. So I think E.J. Horton's going to get on the field. I don't know if it's going to be inside or outside. I'm expecting it to be on the outside, so that's why I've got him here, second team at the X with the oars in between him, Cortez Braham and Jeremiah Aaron. Then at the slot, this is what West Virginia had on their official depth chart. They had Jarrell Williams and Noah Massey. Neither one of the two guys has gotten a ton of snaps so far in this 2 games that we've seen. But like I said, Noah Massey's a guy that's certainly different there to have at the slot position, 6'5", 240. Maybe West Virginia utilizes him a little bit more against Pitt, as Pitt has that attacking defense. Maybe they'll need a bigger framed guy there in the slot to block a little bit. So maybe we'll finally see a little bit more of the D2 transfer, Noah Massey, and Jarrell Williams, good potential throughout his Mountaineer career. We'll see what happens. And then at the other inside receiver position, the X receiver, Preston Fox, has been the starter throughout the season. And I think we'll see plenty of Rodney Gallagher sprinkled in, maybe the most we've seen yet this season against Pitt. Hopefully they have some things up their sleeve for him. And then at the Z receiver position, Devin Carter, obviously the guy for the Mountaineers there, going to be the number 1 receiver for the West Virginia Mountaineers this season, I suspect. And if Traylon Ray's back, which I'm hoping that he will be, he'll be getting the other reps there. They've got high hopes for that true freshman. Honestly, I think Devin Carter and Traylon Ray are probably the favorite 2 wide receivers for the coaching staff on this squad. Probably they guy they feel like are their top two right now. But with what Hudson Clement showed, he's certainly got to move over to the X position to get him on the field as well. So I think that's what you're looking at wide receiver rotation, depth chart wise. Tight end, Cole Taylor, Traylon Davis, obviously the pecking order there. Left tackle, Wyatt Milam, Nick Malone. That goes without speaking, I think, as does Thomas Remock and Jaquay Hubbard at left guard. Although I think on the official depth chart, they may have had a preferred walk-on Bryce Biggs here at this spot at left guard, if I'm not mistaken. Just as they had it at center, they had Landon Livingston as Zach Frazier's backup. But I think if anything was to happen, you'd see Brandon Yates slide over there, look no further than the game against Duquesne. Second team offensive line, Brandon Yates slid over and snapped there before they brought in Landon Livingston. And then right guard, Brandon Yates has been the starter. Jaquay Hubbard has been spelling him, getting in the mix there. And then at the right tackle spot, Doug Nestor, obviously the starter there, but true freshman Johnny Williams, I think he continues to impress. I've got him here second team listed, even though, if anything was to happen, Nick Malone would probably be the go-to guy. I like Johnny Williams, wanted to throw him on here. Defensive-wise, Sean Martin and Termiwa Durage seem like the top two there at the defensive end spot, but don't rule out, other guys getting involved there. Of course, West Virginia seems to have a very deep defensive lineman. It looks like they can go anywhere from 8 to 10 deep maybe. But Termiwa Durage, like I said, certainly been impressive with his 2.5 sacks over 2 games thus far, and we know how strong and impactful Sean Martin can be for this defensive line and for this team in general. Defensive tackle, I think Eddie V's done great this season. Jalen Thornton was listed here on the official depth chart, but to me, Day-Day Hawkins has been the guy getting more snaps, and he's been very disruptive when he's gotten in there, and I love Day-Day Hawkins. I think he's going to be a difference maker on this defense moving forward. You're going to continue to hear his name more and more, I think. And then at the nose tackle spot, Mike Lockhart, obviously the starter, backed up for Torma Mulba, but don't rule out other guys there, such as Hammond Russell getting involved. He's been getting his fair share of snaps. I might have even should have thrown an or in between there and put him in there. And then, like I said, Asante Redwood's making his way back. I don't know if he'll factor in defensive tackle or defensive end, but that's a pass rusher West Virginia can and probably will use as he's expected to return this week. Bandit position, Jared Bartlett, Tyron Bradley, your main two there. The Will linebacker and Mike linebacker, obviously, like I said, want to throw out the caveat. Trey Lathan and Lee Koba virtually seem to be interchangeable this season, and I think bringing Lee Koba off this edge sometimes at the Will linebacker spot's been very beneficial for West Virginia, but continue to list them this way on the depth chart because that's how they are on the official depth chart. But I think it has Trey Lathan and Jaffa Veras on the official, but I threw the or out with Ben Cutter there because I think on the snaps he got in, he was impressive, and he outpaced Ja, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Mike linebacker, Lee Koba, obviously the man. Tyreek Austin Cave, the Miami transfer, or Caden Bizer, as we said, the newly minted scholarship Caden Bizer there. I think both those guys have spelled him at times in the past. And then the spear position, Hershey McLaurin, first string, Lance Dixon, second string, but you almost could put them both first stringers. Their snap counts have been almost identical throughout 2 games. Cornerback position, talked a little bit about this already. Beanie Bishop, the most consistent corner for West Virginia this season. They're just looking for other guys that can match that. Jacoby Spells, I've got him second team behind him there. Due to the Montre Miller injury, I've removed him from the depth chart currently, put Jacoby Spells on in his place. And then at the other side, I think you'll see Malachi Ruffin take over as the starter and Andrew Wilson move to the second team. If you don't see one of the Jacksons get involved, like I said, they've talked about making some changes, so who knows what those changes will be. But for now, that's what I'm going with. Free safety, Aubrey Burks, Keyshawn Cobb, been nearly split the reps there. Aubrey Burks finally showcased his skills a little bit more in this game against Duquesne. Couple TFLs and a sack. And then cat safety, it's been Anthony Wilson by himself pretty much here, but Marcus Floyd we're hoping to get back this week, as I talked about earlier in the injury update. So those are the guys there. And then obviously kicker Michael Hayes, punter Oliver Straw. That's who I didn't mention in the injury update. I don't know if Neil Brown brought him up in the press conference, but it was a sprained ankle. I think they're hopeful he'll be back. Just depend on how he looks this week. If not, Leighton Bechtel, the preferred walk-on, will be ready to go. So that's what I've got as far as my depth chart projections. Let me know what you guys are thinking, though, if you're in here live or if you're in here after the fact, watching on playback, drop it in the comments. But appreciate you guys being in here live that are in here. I'm going to catch up with your comments one more time, and then we'll call it a stream here for this snap count stream post-Duquesne here. Nick says, all due respect to West Virginia kids, but West Virginia will never see its glory days if we don't get skill players from legit states like Florida, Maryland, and Virginia. I mean, Nick, I agree with you overall, but I think you can definitely sprinkle in some of those guys. And I love the want to of those West Virginia players. And it certainly seems to mean more to those guys when they get on the field. And West Virginia has, a history of those guys making an impact. You look Owen Schmitz, the Reed Williams of the world. Like I said, you're not going to build a team with those guys, but sprinkle them in when you can. And I think it's great. And West Virginia has produced some strong in-state players. I mean, look at the offensive line of this team: Wyatt Milam, Doug Nestor, Zach Frazier, arguably going to be all conference guys, all three from the state. So I think sprinkling them in is good, and they've been producing good scholarship players lately. But, Hudson Clement and Preston Fox, I think they've cemented their way into being, impactful skill players on this roster. But I get what you're saying. Those other states produce, a lot better talent overall on the whole, and I get that. And West Virginia, I think, has done a good job recruiting those states, especially those surrounding ones, some of those that you mentioned. Pennsylvania, they've got Rodney Gallagher as a true freshman in that looks amazing. They've got Jaheim White in, a true freshman there that looks amazing. Traylon Ray's from Florida. He's a true freshman wide receiver that's going to be really good this season. Garrett Green's from Florida at the quarterback position. DJ Oliver, the true freshman running back I mentioned, he's from Florida. So, I mean, they've recruited those states. CJ Donaldson's also from Florida. So we do have, talented skill players from some of those states. But I certainly agree with you, Nick. I get what you're saying, but I appreciate you tuning in and chiming in there and giving us your thoughts. Silas says, missed the post-game live. Is that only on Mark Rogers' channel or also this one? So we've been having an issue with our StreamYard connecting to the West Virginia Voice College Football channel this season. So unfortunately, it looks like those are going to be on the West Virginia Voice College Football channel and the Big 12 Voice College Football channel. Of course, last year they were streamed here as well, and would love to have them simulcast across all three. But just be sure you're subscribed to the West Virginia Voice College Football channel or the Big 12 Voice College Football channel, which hopefully you're subscribed to both of those anyway. Good content coming out over there. But definitely appreciate you mentioning that, Silas, so that people can catch the post-game stream. We'll be hosting those throughout the season, but definitely they will be on the West Virginia Voice of College Football channel and the Big 12 Voice of College Football channel. Tune into our social media for announcements, though. I usually post the link, a little bit ahead of time before we start the stream. So even if you're not subscribed there, if you follow us on social media, you can see me post it and click the link there and watch it. And hopefully while you're watching it, you can subscribe to whichever channel that you watch it on. But yeah, check us out on social media. Country Roads Webcast on Facebook and Instagram. And then, as you see there on the bottom, at WVU Country Roads on X/Twitter, where we'll announce those and have the link for those. But Silas says, tell your buddy, still didn't like the gold kids with the gray unis. He liked the blue with the gray better. Gold lids. I thought that's what you meant, Silas. Hey, I get it. To each their own. I mean, I personally loved it. But, I'm one of the weird ones that gold is my favorite. That's why I always put the gold helmet right here prominently behind me, because I love it. I'd go all gold all game if it was up to me. I mean, all gold every game, excuse me, if it was up to me. I'm one of the weirdos, but I get it. I'm in the minority there. I know most people prefer the blue helmets, and I understand that tradition and everything. And, a lot of people agree with you. Most people were, throwing up emojis up at the uniforms, but I loved them. Honestly, one of my favorite combos. I'd put it top 5, top 8, something like that. I love the gold with the all gray personally, but I won't divulge too far into uniform talk. I tend to do that occasionally as we go down rabbit holes sometimes. But I know most people agree with you, Silas, and thought the uniform sucked. But as Zim 1963 here says, of course, judging by the 1963, I think a lot of people, in the older group certainly feel that way as well. But a lot of the younger people love it. I don't know if I can classify myself there. I'm in my 30s, somewhere in the middle probably, but I loved them. I saw Uniswag on Twitter had them in their top 10 uniforms of the week across all of college football. The players absolutely loved them. I've seen recruits, tweeting that they love the look as well. So that's the plus side to it, is at least, the younger guys love it. And if the recruits love it and the players love it, and it's going to help in that aspect, I'm all for it as well. Whatever helps West Virginia, grow bigger and better with the brand, even if it is, at the case of some fans not liking the look. As long as they win, I think they'll be happy at the end of the day. Sal says he likes gold with a blue jersey or a gold jersey also. Yeah, probably, a better look overall that more people can get behind. But nonetheless, at least they came away with the win. Hopefully they're able to do the same against Pitt. We'll be talking about that all throughout the week. It's Pitt Hate Week. Eat shit, Pitt. I've got the new magnets. My wife got these for me at Culture Fest. Was down in Pipestem this past week. One of our friends is a vendor there, made these. I got the West by God and the Eat Shit Pitt. Perfectly timed for Pitt Hate Week here as the Backyard Brawl approaches. Plenty of content coming from us here at the Country Roads webcast. We'll be talking a ton about that game. Like I said, check out the Duquesne Review Pod if you haven't already. Got this stream you can check out now to get to the snap counts. Also, what else was that I put out today? Oh, yeah, the player grades, obviously. The weekly player grades. I did the offense and defense in one video for the first time. Probably going to try and continue to do it that way throughout the season. So check out the Duquesne Review Pod. Check out the player grades if you haven't already. And like I said, the Q&A stream, and we want to hear your predictions for the Backyard Brawl. Come give us those Wednesday night. We'll let you know exactly what time at some point Wednesday, but plan on Wednesday night to be here again live and chat with us and give us your prediction for the Backyard Brawl. If you're watching this one after the fact, come in live and chat with us Wednesday. We want to hear your all's predictions for the Backyard Brawl. And then, of course, we'll also have our predictions coming on the Backyard Brawl Preview and Predictions podcast episode, which you can find here on YouTube and on any podcast platform you like, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. You can find the Country Roads webcast. Just search there. That'll be the content coming throughout the week here. And then, as I mentioned earlier, on the West Virginia Voice of College Football channel and the Big 12 Voice of College Football channel, you can catch us hosting the post-game shows throughout the season. But be on the lookout for plenty of Pitt content coming this week. Check out the Duquesne content we've put out today. Appreciate you tuning in this stream, whether it's live or on a playback. Hit the like button on your way out. Looking forward to an awesome and exciting week as the Backyard Brawl approaches the 106th edition night game in Morgantown. Most important game of the Neil Brown era. Very vital game for the future of the West Virginia football program. So it's going to be loud. It's going to be an awesome atmosphere. Excited to talk about it in the build up to that Backyard Brawl. So be on the lookout for that content coming, guys. Subscribe here to the Country Roads webcast for plenty of West Virginia sports content if you're a Mountaineer fan, and look forward to the prediction stream. Looking forward to hearing your all's predictions for the game coming up Wednesday night. Having said that, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.